What does the Iranian army have that the West is afraid to confront? Even though it has long viewed Iran as a thorn in the side, the West still wants to avoid direct clashes with the Iranian army, one of the most powerful military forces in the Middle East. The New York Times on April 12 quoted Mr. Afshon Ostovar, Associate Professor of National Security and Defense Issues at the U.S. Navy's Postgraduate Training School. There is a reason that until now Iran still have not been attacked. Not because Iran's opponents are afraid of them, but because those countries realize that a war with Iran would be an extremely serious war. The above statement accurately reflects the way the US, Israel and Western allies view Tehran, one of the strongest military forces in the Middle East. Elite army, numerous allies. According to the 2023 annual assessment of the International Institute for Strategic Studies, IISS, the Iranian armed forces are one of the largest armies in the Middle East. Tehran currently possesses at least 580,000 active soldiers and 200,000 reserve troops. These troops are divided into two armies, the Islamic Republic of Iran Army, IA, and the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. The main special feature is the Quds Force of the IRGC. This is an elite group responsible for arming, training and supporting the system of proxy armies in the Middle East. These armies are collectively known as the Resistance Axis, including many forces that have been frequently named in the news in recent times such as the Hezbollah force in Lebanon, the Houthi rebels in Yemen, and the Islamist movement Hamas in Gaza. Nominally, these proxy armies do not belong to Iran. However, military analysts all assess that they are loyal to Iran, ready to rescue Tehran if the country is attacked. In terms of equipment, the Iranian army is also considered one of the most powerful forces in the Middle East. The country's military strategy emphasizes deterrence through the development of high-precision long-range missiles, drones and air defense systems. During the war with Iraq in the 1980s, very few countries were willing to sell weapons to Iran. Therefore, after this war ended, Iran's leaders ordered the IRGC to focus its efforts on developing the domestic defense industry, ensuring that Tehran would never have to depend on foreign countries for defense. To date, Tehran's arsenal is the largest in the Middle East, including cruise missiles, ballistic missiles with a range of up to 2,000 kilometers, and a large number of drones with a flight range of 2,000 to 2,500 kilometers capable of flying low to avoid radar. These weapons allow Iran to attack any location in the Middle East. Iran's fleet is also quite strong with speedboats and small submarines. This force can stagger all ships passing through the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. Despite the above strengths, experts agree that Iran's military potential is still far behind the US, Israel and many European countries. The Air Force is the country's biggest weakness, with most of Tehran's fighter aircraft being aided by the US to the previous regime in the 1960s and 1970s. The same thing happens with the tank system and armored vehicles of this country. However, the advantage in numbers and understanding of terrain still makes Iran a formidable opponent of the West in the Middle East. With this region's strategic location with the global supply chain, the whole world does not want to see the prospect of a clash between these two powers about to break out. Why Iran and Israel became rivals in the Middle East. Iran and Israel have been rivals for the past few decades, with Tehran saying it wants to wipe Tel Aviv off the map. For its part, Israel considers Iran its greatest rival. But this was not always the case. In fact, Israel and Iran were allies before the 1979 Iranian Islamic Revolution. Iran was one of the first countries to recognize Israel after its creation in 1948. After the Islamic Revolution, many Jews left Iran, but today more than 20,000 Jews still live in Iran. When did Israel-Iran relations change? According to the International Crisis Group, crisisgroup.org, tensions between Iran and Israel have been increasing for many years. In Syria, Israel is waging an aggressive military campaign that strategists call the war between wars, targeting Iranian arms shipments, some of which are headed to Lebanon and its forces. Quantity related to Iran. Meanwhile, Iran has long supported many armed groups that Israel considers threats. Iran has been accused by Israel of arming and training Hamas, did not criticize Hamas' attack on Israel on October 7 last year. In addition, Tehran has supported actions on many fronts against Israel and the US, such as those of the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Islamic resistance in Iraq and Syria throughout the conflict. Conflict in Gaza. It is therefore essential that both sides avoid major escalation or at least refrain from ill-calculated actions. But even if they succeed in doing that at this stage, the continuation of the conflict in Gaza is still pushing the Middle East to the brink, a catastrophic scenario in which everyone will be the loser. According to dw.com/crisisgroup.org.